flawless. Joshua and Iyabo were the quintessential couple, admired by many. Living in the bustling city of Lagos, they had built a life together that seemed flawless. With 3 beautiful children, Junior, Tina, and Simi, they were the envy of their neighbors. Their 12-year marriage had been filled with memories of joy, family vacations, and late-night conversations about their dreams. Joshua, a successful architect, worked long hours to provide the best for his family. Iyabo, a loving wife and mother, was the one who kept their home warm and welcoming. But beneath the surface of this perfect family lay something darker, something that Joshua had never suspected. Iyabo had secrets that would unravel their world and shatter everything Joshua held dear. Long before she married Joshua, Iyabo had been in a passionate relationship with Tony. Tony was charming, adventurous, and ambitious, qualities that had drawn Iyabo to him like a moth to a flame. But Tony had never been the settling down type, and their relationship had fizzled out when Iyabo met Joshua, the stable and responsible man she eventually married. Over the years, though, Tony had never completely left her heart. When he reappeared in her life years after her marriage, something stirred within Iyabo. He had started traveling to Lagos for business, and every time he was in town, he would find an excuse to see her. What began as innocent catch-ups soon morphed into something much more dangerous. Iyabo was playing with fire, but she was in too deep to care. Tony had become a regular part of Iyabo's life again, though she kept him hidden in the shadows of her marriage. Joshua never suspected a thing. He worked long hours, which gave Iyabo the perfect opportunity to meet Tony when he was in town. Their rendezvous were always carefully planned, occurring in discreet hotels, or in Tony's rented apartment on the outskirts of Lagos. At first, it was thrilling, the secrecy, the danger, the stolen moments. Iyabo convinced herself that what she was doing wasn't hurting anyone. She told herself that she still loved Joshua, that she was just satisfying a part of her that had never stopped loving Tony. But as time went on, the boundaries blurred. What began as an affair of convenience became an emotional entanglement she couldn't escape from. Tony had his hold on her, and Iyabo was torn between 2 worlds. Managing 2 relationships became Iyabo's new reality. During the day, she was the dutiful wife and mother, taking care of the children, running the household, and maintaining the illusion of a perfect life. But whenever she could, she would sneak away to meet Tony. With every kiss, every touch, she drifted further from Joshua. Joshua, oblivious to the betrayal, was preoccupied with his career and providing for the family. He trusted Iyabo implicitly, and never questioned her when she said she was going to see friends or run errands. To him, she was still the woman he fell in love with, the mother of his children, and the anchor of his home. Tony, unlike Joshua, wanted more from Iyabo. He had grown impatient with their secret meetings, and his desire to reignite what they had in the past grew stronger with each encounter. He wanted Iyabo all to himself, and the more time they spent together, the more he pushed for her to leave Joshua. But Iyabo wasn't ready to make such a drastic move. She loved her children, and despite the affair, a part of her still loved Joshua. She wasn't willing to tear her family apart, no matter how much Tony pressured her. Still, the pull between them was undeniable, and Iyabo found herself trapped in a web of her own making. Though Joshua had no reason to suspect Iyabo's affair, subtle cracks began to show in their marriage. Iyabo's growing emotional distance became evident in the little things: missed family dinners, her distracted nature, and the way she no longer seemed interested in the things they once shared. Joshua chalked it up to the stresses of everyday life. He reasoned that after 12 years of marriage, it was normal for things to change. Yet, a small, gnawing feeling began to creep into his heart, though he quickly pushed it aside. He had no reason to doubt her. Iyabo had always been the perfect wife. One day, Joshua received an incredible job offer. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work for an American firm. This meant relocating the entire family to the United States, something he had always dreamed of. The idea of a fresh start, a better life for his children, and the chance to take his career to new heights thrilled him. He shared the news with Iyabo, who feigned excitement. Moving to the US meant ending her affair with Tony, a thought that both terrified and relieved her. But Joshua was determined, and Iyabo knew she had no choice but to go along with the plan. To secure their visas, Joshua needed to gather all necessary documents, including a DNA test for the children, a requirement from the immigration office to prove biological parentage. It seemed like a formality, something that would only take a few days. Joshua didn't think much of it, but Iyabo's heart sank when she heard the news. She knew the truth, and the DNA test threatened to expose everything. As the day of the test approached, Iyabo became more and more anxious. She tried to act normal, but the weight of her lies began to crush her. Joshua, still unsuspecting, was focused on the upcoming move, oblivious to the storm brewing right beneath his feet. A few days after the test, the results arrived. Joshua eagerly opened the envelope, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. But as he read the words on the page, his heart stopped. None of the children, Junior, Tina, or Simi, were his. His world shattered in an instant. The perfect life he thought he had was a lie. Joshua sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the magnitude of the betrayal. The love, the trust, the years of devotion, all of it was built on deception. His hands trembled as he realized that everything he thought he knew about his family was a facade. That evening, Joshua confronted Iyabo. His voice was low, barely concealing the hurt and anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Who is the father of my children?" he asked, his voice trembling. Iyabo, cornered and terrified, broke down in tears. She tried to explain, to tell him that it had all been a mistake, but the words felt hollow. Joshua's pain was too deep, his trust too shattered. She confessed everything, the affair with Tony, the lies she had told, and the fact that Tony was the biological father of all 3 children. Joshua listened in stunned silence, unable to process the enormity of her betrayal. The days following Iyabo's confession were filled with silence and tension. Joshua moved into the guest room, unable to be near the woman he once loved so deeply. His heart ached not only for himself, but for the children he had loved and raised as his own, now revealed to be someone else's. Iyabo, consumed with guilt and regret, tried to reach out to Joshua, but he was unreachable. The damage had been done, and there was no going back. Their once perfect marriage was now in ruins, and the future seemed bleak. Despite the turmoil, the children remained blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding around them. Junior, Tina, and Simi continued with their school routines, unaware of the fracture in their family. Joshua loved them, and despite the betrayal, he couldn't imagine his life without them. But the knowledge that they weren't biologically his weighed heavily on his heart. Iyabo, too, loved her children deeply, but the shame of her actions cast a shadow over her relationship with them. She knew that one day, the truth would come out, and she dreaded the moment when she would have to explain to them why their family had fallen apart. Meanwhile, Tony remained in the background, unaware of the chaos his actions had caused in Iyabo's life. He continued to reach out to her, urging her to leave Joshua and start a new life with him. But Iyabo was torn. Her love for Tony had never wavered, but the destruction of her marriage and the potential fallout for her children made her hesitant. She had always believed she could juggle both worlds, but now, the harsh reality of her choices was catching up with her. Tony's influence was strong, but the weight of her family's future loomed larger than ever. Joshua faced a difficult choice. He could leave Iyabo, take the children, and start over, but the thought of losing the family he had built was unbearable. Despite everything, He loved his children and couldn't imagine life without them. But how could he stay with a woman who had lied to him for so long, who had betrayed him in the worst possible way? Every day, Joshua wrestled with his emotions. He wanted to forgive, but the pain was too fresh. He wanted to move on, but the love he had for his family kept pulling him back. As the weeks passed, Joshua and Iyabo found themselves at a crossroads. Their marriage was in ruins, their trust shattered, and their future uncertain. The decision to move to the US now seemed impossible, with so much unresolved tension between them. Iyabo knew she had to make a choice, Tony or Joshua. But no matter what she decided, someone would be hurt. The love triangle she had created had spiraled out of control, and now, she was faced with the consequences of her actions. As Iyabo tried to make sense of the mess her life had become, Tony's patience began to wear thin. During one of their clandestine meetings, he issued an ultimatum. He wanted Iyabo to leave Joshua and move in with him in OTA. He promised her a new life, one free of deception and secrecy. "Iyabo, this has gone on long enough," Tony said, his voice low but firm. "I love you, and I know you love me too. We can be together, finally, without sneaking around. But you need to make a choice, me or him. I can't keep doing this." His words rattled Iyabo. She had always felt safe with Tony in the background, but now he was demanding something more. She wanted to hold on to her life with Joshua and the children, but Tony's presence was now undeniable. She had to choose, and it terrified her. While Iyabo grappled with her decision, Joshua sank further into a world of silence and torment. Every time he looked at the children he had raised, loved, and cherished, his heart ached with the knowledge that they weren't his. Yet, they still called him Daddy, and he couldn't bear the thought of breaking their hearts by leaving. Joshua spent long nights staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through possibilities. Should he forgive Iyabo? Could he move on from this betrayal? The idea of rebuilding his life without her felt like an impossible task, but the pain was so overwhelming that it clouded every moment of his existence. The one thing he knew for sure was that he loved those kids, and no DNA test could take that away. But the question of whether he could forgive Iyabo remained unanswered, tormenting him every day. Iyabo knew that time was running out. Tony's ultimatum weighed heavily on her mind, but what hurt the most was the pain she had caused Joshua. She saw it in his eyes every day, the sadness, the quiet resentment, and the confusion. Joshua had always been a good man, a loving husband, and an incredible father, and she had betrayed him in the worst way possible. The guilt consumed her. Every time Joshua hugged the children or smiled at them, her heart ached. She knew she had stolen something precious from him, and she wasn't sure she could ever make it right. Tony, for all his passion and excitement, could never fill the void that Joshua had left in her heart. She missed the man Joshua used to be, the way he would playfully tease her, the way they laughed together, and the way they made plans for the future. Now, that future seemed uncertain, and the love triangle she had created was threatening to destroy everything. Junior, Tina, and Simi were young, but they were observant. They began to notice the growing distance between their parents, the way Joshua no longer smiled at Iyabo, the way they rarely talked or sat together. The once warm and loving atmosphere in the house had grown cold, and the children felt the change deeply. "Mommy, is Daddy mad at you?" Simi, the youngest, asked innocently one evening. Her big brown eyes were full of confusion and concern. Iyabo forced a smile and pulled Simi close, her heart breaking. "No, sweetie. Daddy's just busy with work," she lied, trying to shield her daughter from the truth. But even as she said the words, she knew the children could feel that something was wrong. Joshua, too, noticed the children's unease. They had always been close, but now they seemed hesitant, as if they sensed the tension between their parents. The thought of how this was affecting them made Joshua's heart ache even more. He had to make a decision, and soon. One evening, Joshua took a long walk through the streets of Lagos, his mind swirling with emotions. The city was alive with the usual hustle and bustle, vendors calling out to sell their wares, cars honking, and people rushing about their daily lives. But Joshua felt disconnected from it all. As he walked, memories of his life with Iyabo flooded his mind. He thought of their wedding day, the way she had looked so beautiful in her white dress, the way they had danced together, full of hope and excitement for the future. He thought of the birth of each of their children, the joy they had shared as they became parents together. But now, all of those moments felt tainted by the knowledge of Iyabo's betrayal. How had things gotten so bad? Had he missed the signs? Could he have done something differently? Joshua stopped at a small park, and sat on a bench, staring up at the night sky. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing: he couldn't live like this forever. Something had to change. Unable to bear the tension any longer, Iyabo finally broke down one night, after the children had gone to bed. She found Joshua sitting in the living room, staring at the TV, but clearly lost in thought. "Joshua," she began, her voice trembling, "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for. But please, can we try to fix this? Can we find a way to move forward, for the sake of the children? I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose everything." Joshua turned to her, his face unreadable. "Iyabo," he said slowly, "do you even realize what you've done? You didn't just cheat on me, you lied to me for years. You let me believe those children were mine, and now I don't even know who I am anymore. How do you expect me to forgive that?" Tears streamed down Iyabo's face as she knelt before him, her heart breaking. "I made a terrible mistake, Joshua. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you, please don't give up on us. Don't give up on our family." Joshua looked at her for a long moment, his emotions warring inside him. He wanted to forgive her, for the sake of the children, for the life they had built together. But could he ever truly move past the betrayal? After a long night of silence and contemplation, Joshua finally made a decision. The next morning, he called Iyabo into the living room. His face was calm, but there was a sadness in his eyes that Iyabo had never seen before. "I've thought long and hard about this, Iyabo," he began, his voice steady. "I love those children. I raised them, I watched them grow, and no DNA test can change that. But I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. You betrayed me in a way I never thought was possible." Iyabo held her breath, waiting for his next words. "I'm willing to stay," Joshua continued, "but only for the children. They don't deserve to suffer because of what you did. But as for us, I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were." Iyabo's heart sank. She had hoped for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild their relationship, but Joshua's words made it clear that things would never be the same. In the days that followed, Joshua and Iyabo lived in a fragile truce. They continued their routines for the sake of the children, but the warmth that had once defined their relationship was gone. Joshua kept his distance, and though they shared the same house, it felt like they were living in two different worlds. Iyabo tried to make amends in small ways, cooking his favorite meals, trying to engage him in conversation, but Joshua's responses were curt and distant. He was polite, but the emotional connection they once shared had been severed. Tony, sensing Iyabo's turmoil, continued to reach out to her, offering her the escape she craved. But now, Iyabo felt trapped between two impossible choices: stay in a loveless marriage for the sake of her children, or risk everything by leaving with Tony. As time passed, the children began to sense the growing distance between their parents. They noticed how Joshua no longer kissed Iyabo goodbye in the mornings, how they rarely laughed together like they used to. Even the youngest, Simi, could tell that something wasn't right. "Mommy, is everything okay with you and Daddy?" Junior, the oldest, asked one evening. Iyabo forced a smile, her heart breaking. "Of course, sweetie. Everything's fine. Daddy and I are just a little busy, that's all." But Junior wasn't convinced. He had always been perceptive, and he could feel the tension in the air. He didn't push further, but the question lingered in his mind, and the unease continued to grow. Tony's voice crackled through the phone, filled with desperation. "Iyabo, you deserve to be happy. We deserve to be happy. How long are you going to keep pretending with Joshua? You're not just hurting yourself, you're hurting me, and eventually, the kids too. Leave him. Start fresh with me. I'm willing to be a father to those kids, to give you the life you want." Iyabo sat in silence, gripping the phone tightly. Tony had always been the excitement in her life, the thrill she sought outside of her responsibilities. But this was different. He wasn't just offering passion anymore, he was asking for her entire life. The pressure mounted, and she found herself torn between two paths. Could she really break apart her family, or would she live with the guilt of a loveless marriage forever? Joshua had been quiet for weeks, his mind swirling with doubt and confusion. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Iyabo's betrayal. He had never suspected her of cheating before the DNA tests, but now, every action, every conversation, felt suspicious. Late one night, while Iyabo was sleeping, Joshua went through her phone. He felt guilty for invading her privacy, but the need for answers consumed him. As he scrolled through messages, his heart sank. There, buried in a series of deleted messages, were exchanges between Iyabo and Tony. They had been ongoing for years, their love affair hidden behind business trips and casual lies. Joshua's hands trembled as he set the phone down. The betrayal was deeper than he had imagined. It wasn't just about the children anymore. His entire marriage had been built on a foundation of lies. The next morning, Joshua couldn't hold back any longer. As soon as Iyabo came down for breakfast, he set the phone on the table, opened to the messages with Tony. His eyes were cold, filled with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Iyabo," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "how long?" Iyabo's face went pale as she saw the screen. Her mouth opened to speak, but no words came out. She knew there was no use lying anymore, he had seen the truth. "Joshua, she began, but he cut her off. "How long have you been seeing him?" Joshua's voice grew louder, filled with fury and heartbreak. "Was it before the kids? After? Were there any moments in our marriage that were real?" Tears filled Iyabo's eyes as she realized how deep her deception had run. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It started before we got married, and I didn't know how to stop." The weight of her words crashed over Joshua like a tidal wave. He had given her everything, built a life with her, and now he realized that it had all been a lie. Unbeknownst to Joshua and Iyabo, the children had overheard the argument from the hallway. Junior, the eldest, stood frozen as he listened to the revelation of his mother's affair. His heart pounded in his chest, confusion and fear swirling in his mind. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew that something was deeply wrong. Simi clung to her older brother's arm, tears streaming down her face. "What's happening, Junior?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why is Daddy so mad at Mommy?" Junior didn't know how to answer. He pulled his younger sister close, trying to comfort her, but the fear in his own heart was too overwhelming. Joshua heard the children's footsteps and looked up, his face softening for a moment as he saw their frightened expressions. The pain in his heart deepened, knowing that they were now caught in the middle of the mess Iyabo had created. After the confrontation, Iyabo couldn't hold back her guilt any longer. She approached Joshua later that evening, her face tear-streaked and filled with regret. "Joshua, I know I've hurt you more than I can ever make up for. I know I've destroyed our marriage. But please, I'm begging you, for the sake of the children, let's try to work through this." Joshua looked at her, his eyes hollow. "Iyabo, I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You didn't just betray me, you've been lying for over a decade. You've taken away my right to be a father, and now you want me to just move on. I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Iyabo pleaded. "I just want a chance to fix what I've broken. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, anything. I can't lose you." Joshua's heart was torn. He still loved her, despite everything, but the trust had been shattered beyond repair. Meanwhile, Tony refused to let go of Iyabo. He continued to call her, texting her throughout the day, urging her to leave Joshua and start fresh with him. He promised her the world, freedom, love, and a new life without the weight of her lies. But Iyabo hesitated. The allure of Tony had once been irresistible, but now, standing on the precipice of losing her family, she wasn't sure if it was worth it. The fantasy of their love had been exciting, but the reality was messy, and it had cost her everything. "Tony," she said during one of their calls, "I don't know if I can do this anymore. I can't leave my children. I can't just walk away from my life." Tony's voice grew frustrated. "Iyabo, you deserve to be happy. We've been through too much for you to just stay stuck in this broken marriage. You know Joshua will never forgive you. Why are you still holding on?" Iyabo didn't have an answer. After weeks of inner turmoil, Joshua made his decision. He couldn't stay in the marriage, not after everything he had learned. The love he once had for Iyabo was overshadowed by the lies and betrayal. But the children, they were his world, and he couldn't bear to leave them behind. One evening, he sat Iyabo down for a final conversation. His face was calm, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "Iyabo, I've thought about this a lot. I can't stay with you. I'll never be able to trust you again. But the children, I'll always be their father. No matter what, I want to be in their lives." Tears welled up in Iyabo's eyes, as she realized the gravity of his words. This was the end of their marriage. There was no going back now. "I understand," Iyabo whispered, her voice breaking. "I know I've ruined everything. But Joshua, please, don't take the children away from me." Joshua shook his head gently. "I won't. We'll figure out a way to co-parent. But as for us, it's over." Breaking the news to the children was one of the hardest things Joshua had ever done. He sat them down one evening, Iyabo by his side, and explained as gently as he could that things would be changing. "Mommy and Daddy won't be living together anymore," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "But that doesn't mean we don't love you. We both love you very much, and nothing will change that." The children stared at him, confusion and fear etched on their faces. "Why?" Junior asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why are you leaving, Daddy?" Joshua's heart broke as he tried to find the right words. Sometimes, grown-ups make mistakes. And sometimes, it's better for them to live apart. But that doesn't mean we're not still a family. I'll still be here for you, every step of the way. Iyabo, sitting beside him, couldn't hold back her tears. The guilt of what she had done weighed heavily on her, and now, her children were paying the price for her actions. A few weeks later, Joshua packed his belongings and moved out of the family home. He found a small apartment nearby so he could still be close to the children, but the act of leaving his home, his life, and his family behind felt like a dagger to his heart. As he stood in the doorway for the last time, he looked back at Iyabo. She stood in the hallway, watching him with tear-filled eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, but the words felt hollow. Joshua nodded once, then turned and walked away. After Joshua left, the house felt hollow to Iyabo. Every corner of the home reminded her of the life she had built with him, a life she had thrown away. The once vibrant laughter of her children seemed muted, and the walls echoed with an unbearable silence. She wandered from room to room, touching the furniture, looking at family photos that lined the walls. The image of Joshua holding their newborn children, their family vacations, and the simple moments of happiness, they all felt like ghosts of a past she could never reclaim. Each memory, once filled with love, now carried the weight of her betrayal. The children sensed the shift too. They would often sit quietly in the living room, Junior especially taking on the role of protector for his siblings. Iyabo noticed how much more withdrawn he had become. He barely spoke to her, and when he did, his words were short and clipped. It broke her heart to realize that she had damaged not just her marriage, but her bond with her children. Joshua adjusted to his new life slowly, but the ache of leaving his children behind haunted him daily. His apartment was much smaller than the house he had shared with Iyabo, but it was enough for him. He filled the space with the bare necessities, focusing on work to keep himself occupied. He spent his weekends with the children, picking them up from Iyabo's house, and trying his best to make their time together feel normal. They would go to the park, the movies, or sometimes just stay at his apartment and play games. But the tension was palpable. Junior, especially, seemed to be struggling with the separation. One evening, as they were watching a movie, Joshua noticed Junior staring at him, deep in thought. "What's on your mind, son?" Joshua asked, pausing the movie. Junior hesitated, then asked, "Dad, do you still love Mom?" The question hit Joshua like a punch to the gut. He had been dreading this moment, knowing that the children would eventually ask questions he wasn't ready to answer. He sighed, gathering his thoughts. "I'll always care about your mom," Joshua said slowly. "But sometimes, love isn't enough to make things work. It doesn't mean we're not still a family. You and your sisters mean the world to me, and that will never change." Junior nodded, but the sadness in his eyes remained. Joshua knew it would take time for his children to process everything, and all he could do was be there for them. Iyabo tried to adjust to her new reality, but it was harder than she anticipated. Tony continued to reach out, but his messages now felt more like a reminder of the life she had destroyed. The passion that once burned so brightly between them had dimmed in the harsh light of reality. She found herself distancing from him, no longer answering his calls or responding to his texts. Her focus shifted back to her children. She knew she had to repair the damage she had done, not just to her marriage, but to her relationship with them. Every time she looked at Junior, she saw the disappointment in his eyes, and it broke her heart. She wanted to explain, to make him understand, but how could she? How could she justify the choices she had made? One afternoon, she sat down with him while the younger children were playing in their room. "Junior," she began softly, "I know things have been really hard lately. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. But I want you to know that I'm still your mom, and I love you more than anything in this world." Junior looked at her, his face stoic. "If you loved us, why did you do it?" Iyabo's breath caught in her throat. She had no easy answer for him. "I made mistakes," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Big ones. And I can't change what I've done, but I can try to be better. I'm so sorry, Junior." For the first time since Joshua left, Junior's tough exterior cracked. He wiped at his eyes, his voice small as he whispered, "I miss Dad." "I know," Iyabo said, pulling him into a hug. "I miss him too." Tony, on the other hand, was growing increasingly frustrated with Iyabo. He had expected her to leave Joshua after everything came to light, but instead, she seemed more distant than ever. His calls went unanswered, and when they did speak, her responses were short and curt. It was as if the fire that had burned between them had been extinguished. One evening, after weeks of silence, Tony decided to confront her. He drove to Lagos, determined to make her see reason. When he arrived at her house, he knocked on the door, his heart pounding with anticipation. Iyabo answered, surprise flickering across her face. "Tony, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he said, pushing past her into the living room. "You've been avoiding me, and I want to know why. We've been through too much for you to just cut me out like this." Iyabo closed the door behind him, crossing her arms. "Tony, things have changed. I don't know if I can do this anymore." Tony's face hardened. "What do you mean, you don't know? You can't just back out now. We've talked about this, leaving Joshua, starting a new life together. What's changed?" Iyabo shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Everything has changed, Tony. I've lost my marriage, my family is falling apart, and now my children are suffering because of my mistakes. I can't keep pretending that this is what I want. It's not." Tony's expression darkened, his voice low and menacing. "So you're just going to throw everything away? After all we've been through?" Iyabo wiped at her eyes, her voice firm. "I made a mistake, Tony. I thought I could have it all, but I was wrong. I need to focus on my family now." Tony stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. In the weeks that followed, Iyabo worked hard to rebuild her relationship with her children. She attended their school events, cooked their favorite meals, and spent more time with them than she ever had before. It was her way of making amends, of showing them that she was still their mother despite everything. Joshua, too, was finding his new normal. He had started attending counseling, hoping to work through the emotional scars left by Iyabo's betrayal. It wasn't easy, but he knew that healing would take time. He also began dating again, though cautiously. It wasn't that he was ready to move on from Iyabo entirely, but he knew he couldn't let her betrayal define the rest of his life. He deserved happiness, and so did his children. One evening, as he sat with the kids, watching them play a board game, Joshua realized that they would be okay. Despite everything, they were still a family. Different, yes, but still bound together by love. Even though Iyabo had distanced herself from Tony and refocused on her children, the shadows of her past lingered. It wasn't just Tony's presence or the guilt she carried, there was something deeper. Every time she tried to rebuild her connection with Joshua, she was haunted by the realization that she had betrayed not just him, but the foundation of their family. Every glance from her children, especially Junior, was a reminder of how fragile their world had become. At night, after tucking the kids into bed, she would sit by the window, staring out at the bustling city of Lagos. The vibrant lights of the city, once a symbol of opportunity and excitement, now felt distant and cold. The noise of the streets, that used to comfort her now only amplified her inner turmoil. She found herself wondering how she had allowed things to spiral so far out of control. Joshua, her rock, her stability, had always been there for her, providing for their family, being a constant source of love and support. Yet, she had chosen Tony, a fleeting, forbidden love that brought nothing but destruction. She had gambled with her family's future, and now, she was paying the price. Joshua continued his sessions with the counselor, and slowly, he began to see some progress. At first, talking about his feelings felt foreign to him. He had always been a man of action, solving problems, providing for his family, and moving forward without dwelling on the emotional toll. But this was different. Iyabo's betrayal had cut deeper than anything he had ever experienced, and it was only through therapy that he began to understand the complexity of his emotions. One of the hardest lessons for him was accepting that love and trust weren't necessarily the same thing. He could still love Iyabo, despite her betrayal, but that didn't mean he could trust her again. The realization was both freeing and painful. It allowed him to let go of the hope that things could return to the way they were, but also forced him to confront the reality of what was lost. His children remained his anchor. Spending time with them, seeing their innocent faces, and hearing their laughter helped him push forward. They were the reason he hadn't completely fallen apart. Yet, he couldn't shake the growing sense of loneliness that gnawed at him late at night. Iyabo's routine with the children was interrupted one day when, out of the blue, Tony showed up at her doorstep. It had been weeks since their last conversation, the heated exchange where she had told him it was over. She had hoped that he would understand and respect her decision, but seeing him again ignited a new sense of dread within her. Tony looked different, more disheveled, like a man who hadn't slept in days. His eyes, once full of charm and mischief, now carried a dark intensity. "Iyabo, we need to talk," he said, his voice low but urgent. "I told you we're done," Iyabo responded, keeping her voice steady. She stepped outside, not wanting the children to overhear. "I don't want this anymore." Tony stepped closer, his expression hardening. "You think you can just walk away from me after all these years? After everything we've been through?" Fear twisted in Iyabo's stomach. This wasn't the same Tony she had known, the one she had fallen for. There was something different in him now, something dangerous. "Tony, I made a mistake. I'm trying to fix things with my family. Please understand. You think you can fix this?" Tony's voice rose, his anger spilling over. "You destroyed your marriage for me, Iyabo. You can't just go back to him like none of this happened." Iyabo took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. "I don't want to hurt anyone anymore. Please, Tony, just leave." For a moment, Tony stared at her, his jaw clenched. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. But the encounter left Iyabo shaken. She realized then that her past with Tony wasn't something she could simply walk away from. It was a part of her story now, a consequence she would have to face head-on. The children were Joshua's refuge, and every weekend they spent together felt like a small victory. He took them to new places, exploring parks, trying out new restaurants, and occasionally driving out of Lagos for a breath of fresh air. He noticed the weight Junior carried. The eldest son was more reserved, quieter, often watching his younger siblings play, but rarely joining in. One evening, after a long day spent at the beach, Junior finally broke the silence that had been building between them. "Dad, do you think you'll ever forgive Mom?" Joshua was taken aback by the question. He had wondered how much Junior truly understood about the situation. He sighed, leaning back in his chair as he thought of how to answer. "Forgiveness isn't easy, Junior. Sometimes it takes time. But your mom, she made a choice that hurt all of us." Junior nodded, his brow furrowed in thought. "I know. But do you still love her?" Joshua looked into his son's eyes and saw the same confusion and hurt he felt within himself. "I do. But love isn't always enough to make things right." The conversation weighed heavily on Joshua's heart. He realized that no matter how hard he tried, his children were deeply affected by what had happened. Their innocence had been shattered, and he couldn't shield them from the pain of betrayal. Iyabo couldn't shake the encounter with Tony. It haunted her, replaying in her mind over and over again. She had always known that her affair with him was dangerous, but she hadn't realized just how much control he had over her until now. His anger had been real, and it scared her to think of what he might do next. But beyond the fear of Tony, Iyabo was consumed with guilt. Joshua had been a good man, a devoted father, and she had destroyed everything for a fleeting thrill, for a relationship that had no future. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her, and she began to wonder if she would ever be able to redeem herself in the eyes of her children, let alone Joshua. She tried to immerse herself in her role as a mother, making sure the children were taken care of, but the guilt was ever present. Every time she looked into their eyes, she saw the consequences of her actions. She had hurt them, and she wasn't sure if she could ever repair that damage. Tony's anger simmered in the weeks that followed. He couldn't understand how Iyabo could just throw him away like that. He had always been the one in control, the one she came to for passion and excitement. Now, she was rejecting him, turning back to the life she had tried to escape from. Late one night, Tony sat in his apartment, nursing a glass of whiskey. His mind raced with thoughts of Iyabo, of their past, and the future that was now slipping away. He had never been one to beg, but desperation was beginning to cloud his judgment. He couldn't let her go. Not like this. As he sat in the dark, his mind began to twist with irrational thoughts. He needed to see her again, to remind her of what they had shared. And if she wouldn't listen to reason, he would make her understand. Tony's obsession began to spiral out of control. He couldn't accept that Iyabo had chosen Joshua over him. The more he thought about it, the more his mind fixated on the idea that Iyabo still loved him, that she was only pushing him away out of guilt or fear. He convinced himself that he could get her back, that all he needed to do was remind her of the passion they once shared. One evening, he decided to drive to Lagos again. He parked a few streets away from Iyabo's house and sat in his car, watching the lights in the windows flicker as the evening settled in. His heart pounded in his chest as he contemplated what to do next. He couldn't just leave things as they were. He had to confront her again, make her see reason. The rational part of him knew this was wrong. He should walk away and let her go, but Tony had never been the kind of man to back down. He got out of the car and began walking toward the house, his footsteps heavy with determination. While Tony's obsession was reaching its peak, Joshua was on his own emotional journey. The therapy sessions had opened his eyes to many things, not just about Iyabo's betrayal, but also about himself. He had spent years avoiding his emotions, burying his pain under his responsibilities. But now, for the first time, he was confronting the hurt head-on. In one of his therapy sessions, Joshua talked about the children and how he was struggling with the knowledge that he wasn't their biological father. "I raised them as my own," he said, his voice cracking. "I've loved them from the moment they were born. But now, it feels like everything has changed." The therapist nodded, offering him a moment of silence to gather his thoughts. "What's changed, Joshua? Your love for them, or the circumstances of their birth?" Joshua wiped his eyes, trying to compose himself. "I don't know. It's just, I feel like I've been living a lie." The therapist leaned forward, her voice calm and steady. "But the love you've given them, the time you've spent with them, that's real. That hasn't changed. DNA doesn't define a father. You've been there for them in ways that no one else has." Joshua's chest tightened as he absorbed the words. He realized that while the betrayal stung, his bond with the children was unbreakable. They were his, regardless of biology. As Iyabo was preparing dinner that evening, she heard a knock on the door. The children were playing in the living room, and Joshua hadn't returned from work yet. When she opened the door, her heart nearly stopped. It was Tony. He stood there, disheveled, his eyes wild with emotion. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low but intense. Iyabo's heart raced with fear. She glanced at the children, making sure they hadn't noticed. "Tony, you can't be here," she whispered harshly. "Please leave." But Tony wasn't listening. He stepped inside, his presence commanding and overwhelming. "You don't get to just end things like this, Iyabo. After everything we've been through, you owe me more than this." Iyabo's hands trembled as she tried to push him back toward the door. Tony, stop. You need to leave before Joshua comes home. Tony grabbed her wrist, his grip tight. I'm not leaving until we talk. You still love me, I know you do. You're just scared. Iyabo's eyes filled with tears. This is over, Tony. I made a mistake, but I'm trying to fix things with my family. Please, don't make this harder than it already is. Just then, the front door opened and Joshua walked in. He froze when he saw Tony standing there, his hand on Iyabo's wrist. His eyes darkened, and for a moment, there was a tense silence between the three of them. Joshua dropped his keys and slowly approached them. What's going on here? His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge of danger in his tone. Tony released Iyabo's wrist and took a step back. He met defiance. I'm here to talk to Iyabo. Joshua's jaw tightened. You have no business here. Leave, now. Tony smirked, his arrogance boiling over. You think you can just take her back after everything? She's been with me for years, Joshua. You can't just sweep this under the rug. Iyabo, trembling, stepped in between the two men. Tony, please. Just go. Joshua's fists clenched at his sides. Iyabo has made her choice. You need to respect that. But Tony wasn't ready to back down. Her choice. You think this is over just because you say so. You don't know what we've had together. Joshua took a deep breath, trying to keep his composure. I don't care about your past. I care about my family. You've already done enough damage. Leave, or I'll make you leave. For a moment, it looked like Tony was going to challenge him, but then something shifted in his eyes. He realized that he had pushed too far. With one final glance at Iyabo, he turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind him. The house was filled with a heavy silence after Tony left. Iyabo stood in the middle of the room, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. Joshua didn't say anything at first, he just stood there, staring at the door. Finally, Iyabo spoke, her voice shaky. I'm sorry, Joshua. I didn't know he would come here. Joshua didn't respond right away. He was still processing what had just happened, or emotion of seeing Tony in his home, touching his wife. When he finally turned to Iyabo, his voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of pain. I thought we were moving forward. But you didn't tell me he was still in your life. I didn't want to make things worse, Iyabo said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I could handle it, but I didn't expect him to show up like this. Joshua sighed, running a hand through his hair. Iyabo, I'm trying. I'm really trying to forgive you, to trust you again. But every time I think we're making progress, something like this happens. I know, Iyabo whispered, her heart breaking. I just want us to be a family again. Joshua looked at her, the weight of the betrayal still heavy on his heart. I do too. But it's going to take more than just words, Iyabo. You need to prove to me that you're done with him, for good. Iyabo nodded, tears still streaming down her face. She knew that Joshua was right. If she wanted any chance of saving her marriage, she had to cut Tony out of her life completely. But deep down, she feared that Tony wouldn't let her go that easily. The following days were filled with tension. Joshua was distant, and Iyabo knew that trust would not be rebuilt overnight. She realized that she needed to take concrete steps to prove her commitment to her family. One of those steps was severing ties with Tony once and for all. She changed her phone number, blocked Tony on every platform, and made sure there was no way for him to contact her. It felt like a small step, but it was a start. She also sought counseling herself, trying to understand why she had allowed her affair with Tony to go on for so long. The guilt weighed heavily on her, but she knew that facing it was the only way forward. Meanwhile, Joshua watched her from a distance, waiting to see if her actions matched her words. He wanted to believe in her, in their future together, but the wound was still fresh. For now, he focused on the children, ensuring that they felt secure and loved, even as the foundation of their family was being rebuilt. Iyabo's decision to sever ties with Tony was a necessary step, but the shadow of the affair lingered in her heart. She couldn't the memories, the moments of passion, the lies she told to keep it hidden. She knew she had to let go of the past, but the guilt was relentless. Every time she looked at Joshua, she saw the pain in his eyes, a constant reminder of her betrayal. Joshua, on the other hand, was wrestling with his own emotions. He wanted to believe that Iyabo was committed to fixing their marriage, but doubt gnawed at him. The DNA test had shaken him to his core. The children, the ones he had loved and nurtured, were not his biological offspring. Even though he knew he could never walk away from them, a part of him couldn't help but feel like his own family. One night, as they lay in bed, the silence between them was suffocating. Joshua stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, while Iyabo lay beside him, her heart heavy. She turned to him, her voice soft. "Joshua, I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But I'm trying, really trying to make things right." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he sighed deeply, as if the weight of everything was pressing down on him. "Iyabo, I want to believe you. I want to trust you again," Joshua finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "But every time I look at you, I remember what you did. I don't know how to move past that." Iyabo's eyes filled with tears, her chest tightening with regret. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just want a chance to prove to you that I'm still here, that I love you." Joshua turned to face her, his expression a mix of sorrow and anger. "Love isn't enough, Iyabo. Trust was what held us together, and you broke that. Love can't fix what you've broken." Over the next few weeks, Iyabo worked tirelessly to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. She was transparent about everything, where she went, who she spoke to, what she was doing. Joshua watched her closely, still cautious, but slowly, he began to see that she was serious about making amends. She threw herself into the household more than ever, paying extra attention to the children, hoping to make them feel the love and stability they deserved. She even made sure to spend time with Joshua, trying to reconnect with him in small ways. She knew the road to healing would be long, but she was determined to fight for her marriage. Joshua, however, was still haunted by the affair. He began to distance himself emotionally, keeping busy with work and spending more time outside the home. On the surface, things seemed to be improving, but deep down, there was still a rift between them, a chasm that Iyabo feared they might never be able to cross. In therapy, Joshua began to open up more about his feelings. "I love my kids," he said one day, his voice heavy with emotion. "But every time I look at them, I'm reminded of the betrayal. It's like a constant wound that won't heal." The therapist nodded, understanding his pain. "It's natural to feel that way, Joshua. You've been through a lot, and it's going to take time to process everything. But remember, your bond with those children isn't just about biology. You've been their father in every way that matters." Joshua's eyes filled with unshed tears. He knew the therapist was right, but the weight of everything still pressed down on him like an unshakable burden. While Joshua and Iyabo were working on their marriage, Tony had retreated to OTA, but his obsession with Iyabo hadn't diminished. He couldn't shake the idea that Iyabo would eventually come back to him. Despite her blocking him from all forms of contact, Tony still found ways to follow her life from a distance, his jealousy growing stronger with each passing day. One evening, As he sat in his office, his mind racing with thoughts of Iyabo, he made a decision. He would confront her one more time, demand that she leave Joshua and be with him. His delusion had grown to the point where he believed that Iyabo still loved him, that she was only staying with Joshua out of obligation. The next day, Tony drove back to Lagos, his mind set on confronting Iyabo. This time, he wouldn't take no for an answer. Evening at home, when the doorbell rang. Joshua was reading a book in the living room, while Iyabo was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The children were playing upstairs, their laughter echoing through the house. "I'll get it," Joshua called out, putting down his book and heading for the door. When he opened it, his eyes widened in shock. Standing on the doorstep, looking disheveled and determined, was Tony. "What the hell are you doing here?" Joshua demanded, his voice filled with fury. Tony didn't flinch. Instead, he crossed his arms and stared Joshua down. "I'm here to talk to Iyabo." Joshua's blood boiled. The audacity of this man, showing up at his home, after everything that had happened. He took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You have no right to be here. Leave now, before I make you." But Tony stood his ground, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can keep her from me? She's only staying with you because of your kids. She still loves me. She'll come back to me, eventually." Joshua's patience snapped. Without thinking, he shoved Tony backward, sending him stumbling off the doorstep. "You need to leave. Now." Iyabo, hearing the commotion, rushed to the door. When she saw Tony standing there, her heart sank. "Tony, what are you doing here? I told you we're done." Tony looked at her, his face a mixture of anger and desperation. "Iyabo, you can't just walk away from us like this. You know we were meant to be together." Joshua stepped in front of Iyabo, shielding her from Tony's gaze. "Get out of here before I call the police," he growled. Tony's eyes flicked between Joshua and Iyabo, and for a moment, it seemed like he might refuse. But then, with a bitter sneer, he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy with defeat. After Tony's unexpected visit, the tension between Joshua and Iyabo reached a breaking point. Joshua was furious, not just at Tony, but at the situation they were in, the lies, the betrayal, the constant threat that Tony still posed. Iyabo, on the other hand, was terrified. She had truly believed that cutting off contact with Tony would be enough, but now she realized how deep his obsession went. She knew that if she didn't find a way to completely remove Tony from their lives, her marriage would never survive. That night, as they sat together in the living room, Joshua finally spoke. "Iyabo, I can't keep living like this. I need to know, are you truly done with him? Because if there's even a chance that you're not, I can't stay in this marriage." Iyabo looked at him, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm done, Joshua. I swear to you, I don't want anything to do with Tony. I love you, and I want to fix this." Joshua sighed, his heart heavy. "Then we need to figure out how to move forward. But if Tony comes near us again, I'm not going to just stand by and let him ruin our lives." Iyabo nodded, knowing that she had to take stronger action. The future of their marriage depended on it. The next morning, Iyabo knew what she had to do. She couldn't let Tony disrupt their lives any longer. She had allowed her past to seep into her present, but if there was ever going to be peace between her and Joshua, she needed to ensure that Tony would stay away, permanently. She made a call to Tony later that day. Her hands trembled as she dialed his number. The phone rang only once before he answered, as if he had been waiting for her call. "Iyabo," Tony's voice was filled with hope. She took a deep breath. "Tony, this has to stop. You showing up at my house, it's crossing a line. I've told you before, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I'm trying to fix my marriage. Tony scoffed. Fix your marriage? With him? You know we belong together, Iyabo. You're just scared. No, Tony, I'm not scared. I'm choosing Joshua. I'm choosing my family, she replied, her voice steady. Tony's voice turned bitter. After everything we've been through, you think you can just walk away? You think he'll ever trust you again? You're fooling yourself. I don't care what you think, Tony. This is my life, and you're not a part of it anymore. Stay away from me, from Joshua, and from our children. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to take legal action. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Tony spoke, his tone icy. You'll regret this, Iyabo. She ended the call without another word, feeling both relieved and terrified. She had cut the final cord, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Tony wasn't going to let go so easily. Iyabo told Joshua about the conversation with Tony that night. She hoped it would bring him some reassurance, but she could see the doubt still lingering in his eyes. Joshua had been trying so hard to move past the betrayal, but the scars were deep. He wanted to believe that Iyabo was truly done with Tony, but the years of deception weighed heavily on his heart. Do you really think he's going to leave us alone? Joshua asked, his voice tense. No, Iyabo admitted. But I've made it clear to him. If he shows up again, I'll go to the police. Joshua nodded but remained quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. Iyabo, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe we need to take a break from each other, some time apart to figure things out. Her heart dropped at his words. You want to separate? Not forever, Joshua clarified. Just some time. We've been through so much, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. Maybe some space will help me think more clearly. Iyabo fought back tears. The idea of being apart from Joshua felt like losing him all over again. But she couldn't deny that things had been strained. Perhaps a break would give them both the clarity they needed. If that's what you want, I'll respect it, she whispered. Joshua sighed, his expression conflicted. I just don't know how to heal from this, Iyabo. I need time. A week later, Joshua packed a suitcase and moved into a small apartment across town. The children were told that Daddy needed to be closer to work for a while, and though they were confused, they accepted the explanation. Iyabo stayed behind in the house, feeling the emptiness creep in as soon as Joshua walked out the door. Every night, without him, was a painful reminder of what she had done. She missed the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his presence, and the quiet comfort of their routine. But more than anything, she missed knowing that they were in this together, side by side. Joshua, in his solitude, found it difficult to escape the flood of emotions. The apartment felt cold and impersonal, nothing like the home he had shared with Iyabo. He tried to focus on work, but his thoughts constantly drifted back to his family. He wondered if the space would help him heal, or if it would only push them further apart. One evening, he sat alone, staring at the family photo he had brought with him. The smiles in the picture seemed so distant now, almost like they belonged to another life. He wanted to forgive Iyabo, to move on and rebuild their life together, but the betrayal was a wound that refused to close. One day, while out for coffee, Joshua met up with his close friend, Kunal. Kunal had been a confidant for Joshua throughout the years, and Joshua had finally decided to confide in him about everything that had happened. She cheated on me, Kunal, Joshua said, his voice heavy with pain. And the kids, they aren't mine. Kunal's eyes widened in shock. What? Joshua, that's... I don't even know what to say. How are you holding up? Joshua shrugged. I don't know, man. I'm trying to keep it together, but it's like every time I think I'm moving forward, something pulls me back. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Connell asked, concern etched on his face. I've moved out for now, just to clear my head. But honestly, I don't know if I can ever really forgive her. Connell leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Look, I'm not going to pretend to understand what you're going through. But I do know this, you've got 3 kids who look up to you, and they need you. Whether they are biologically yours or not, you're their father, Joshua. Joshua nodded slowly. I know. That's the hardest part. I love those kids more than anything. But this whole thing, it's changed everything. I don't know how to look at Iyabo the same way. Take your time, Connell advised. Healing takes time. But don't make any decisions out of anger or hurt. Make them when you're ready, when you've really thought about what you want. Joshua sighed, feeling the weight of Connell's words. He knew that rushing into a decision could make things worse, but he also didn't know how long he could live in this limbo. Meanwhile, Iyabo was struggling with her own demons. The separation was harder than she had anticipated, and the guilt gnawed at her every day. She missed Joshua more than she could put into words, but she also knew that she had caused this rift. Every time the children asked when Daddy was coming home, it broke her heart a little more. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Iyabo sat in the living room, staring at her phone. She had written several messages to Joshua, but she hadn't sent any of them. She didn't want to pressure him, but the silence between them was suffocating. She needed to talk to someone, to get the weight of everything off her chest. She called her sister, Grace, who had always been her confidant. Grace, I don't know what to do anymore, Iyabo said, her voice shaky. I feel like I've lost everything. Grace was quiet for a moment before responding. Iyabo, you made a mistake, a big one. But Joshua loves you. If he's taking time, it's because he's trying to find a way to forgive you. You need to give him that space, but you also need to be ready to fight for your marriage when the time comes. I'm scared, Iyabo whispered. What if he never forgives me? What if this is the end? Grace sighed. You can't think like that. All you can do is show him that you're committed to making things right. But Iyabo, you also have to forgive yourself. You won't be able to move forward if you're stuck in guilt. Iyabo wiped away the tears that had started to fall. I just don't know how to forgive myself for hurting him like this. You have to try, Grace said softly. For the sake of your family, you have to try. As Joshua settled into his new routine, he found solace in structure. His days were filled with work, gym sessions, and occasional visits to friends, but the emptiness of his apartment was a constant reminder of what he had lost. The absence of Iyabo's presence in his life was palpable, and the struggle to adjust to this new reality weighed heavily on him. He began to take better care of himself, focusing on his health and well-being. The physical exertion at the gym helped clear his mind, and he started to find small joys in daily activities that had once seemed mundane. Joshua threw himself into his work, using it as a distraction from his emotional turmoil. Despite his efforts to stay occupied, his thoughts often drifted back to Iyabo. He wondered if the separation was helping or hindering their relationship. The silence between them was deafening, and he missed the intimacy they once shared. Every time he passed a place they used to visit together, a pang of nostalgia would hit him. Iyabo was working hard to keep things normal for the children while grappling with her own emotions. She dedicated herself to their needs, trying to be a supportive and loving mother despite the emotional strain she was under. The kids were confused and missed their father, which made Iyabo's heartache even more acute. She reached out to Joshua occasionally, sending messages and updates about the children. She hoped that these small gestures would show him that she was still invested in their family, even though they were apart. Every response she received from Joshua was carefully scrutinized for signs of hope or reconciliation, but they were always brief and non-committal. In her quieter moments, Iyabo would sit alone, reflecting on the choices she had made. The realization of how much she had hurt Joshua weighed heavily on her. She knew that rebuilding trust was a long and arduous process, but she was determined to prove her commitment to him and their family. One day, as Joshua was running errands, he happened to cross paths with an old friend, Emeka, from his university days. Emeka was someone Joshua had lost touch with over the years, and their unexpected meeting was a welcome distraction. "Joshua! It's been ages!" Emeka exclaimed, shaking his hand warmly. Joshua smiled, appreciating the genuine warmth of the encounter. "Emeka, it's great to see you. How have you been?" They decided to grab a coffee and catch up. Over the course of their conversation, Joshua found himself opening up about the challenges he was facing with his marriage and the separation from Iyabo. Emeka listened attentively, offering empathy and support. "You know," Emeka said thoughtfully, "sometimes it helps to talk things through with someone outside the situation. It gives you a fresh perspective." Joshua nodded. "I appreciate that. It's been hard to see things clearly with everything going on." Emeka continued, "And remember, healing takes time. Don't rush yourself into making decisions you might regret later. Focus on what's best for you and your family." Joshua was grateful for the advice and felt a renewed sense of clarity. He realized that while he needed to take care of himself, he also had to be patient with the process of healing and reconciliation. Tony, still nursing his resentment, found himself growing increasingly desperate. Despite Iyabo's clear message, he couldn't accept that she had truly moved on. His obsession with her had become an all-consuming force, driving him to make reckless decisions. He started showing up at places where Iyabo frequented, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. His presence became increasingly intrusive, and it was clear to those around him that he was fixated on winning her back. One evening, as Iyabo was leaving a local market, she noticed Tony waiting outside. Her heart raced as she tried to avoid eye contact. But Tony approached her, his expression a mix of frustration and pleading. "Iyabo, we need to talk," he said urgently. Iyabo stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. "Tony, I've told you before. We're done. I've moved on." Tony's eyes were wild with emotion. "You can't just throw away what we had. I know you still care about me. You're just too scared to admit it." Iyabo shook her head, trying to remain composed. "I'm not scared. I'm trying to move forward with my life. You need to leave me alone." But Tony was persistent, his anger boiling over. "You think you can just erase me from your life? I won't let you do that." Iyabo quickly walked away, her heart racing. She knew that Tony's obsession was becoming dangerous, and she had to take further action to protect herself and her family. Realizing that Tony's behavior was escalating, Iyabo decided to take legal action. She consulted with a lawyer to discuss options for obtaining a restraining order. The lawyer explained the process and advised her on the best course of action to ensure her safety. Iyabo gathered evidence of Tony's harassment, including witness statements from friends and neighbors who had seen him loitering near her home. With the help of her lawyer, she filed for a restraining order, hoping it would be a deterrent to Tony's intrusive behavior. As she went through the legal process, Iyabo felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The restraining order was a necessary step to protect herself and her family, but it also felt like another painful reminder of the betrayal and chaos Tony had brought into their lives. Joshua continued to struggle with his emotions, but he began to find some clarity in the midst of the turmoil. The support from his friend Emeka, and the time he had taken for himself was slowly helping him process his feelings. He started to see that the path to healing was not just about confronting Iyabo's betrayal, but also about understanding his own needs and desires. He spent time reflecting on his relationship with Iyabo, weighing the possibility of reconciliation against the reality of their current situation. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but he began to consider the future with a clearer perspective. One evening, as he sat by the window of his apartment, he wrote in his journal. The act of putting his thoughts on paper helped him sort through his emotions. He wrote about his love for Iyabo, his anger, and his uncertainty about the future. Joshua's reflections led him to understand that forgiveness was a crucial step, not just for Iyabo, but for his own peace of mind. He realized that holding on to resentment would only continue to hurt him. He had to decide whether he was ready to rebuild their relationship, or if it was time to let go completely. With the restraining order in place and Tony's harassment under control, Iyabo focused on her relationship with Joshua. She wanted to show him that she was committed to rebuilding their marriage, but she knew that words alone were not enough. She needed to demonstrate through actions that she was serious about making amends. Iyabo reached out to Joshua, asking if they could meet to discuss their relationship. She wanted to talk openly about their future and explore the possibility of reconciliation. Joshua agreed to meet, though he remained guarded. They chose a neutral location, a quiet park where they could talk away from the pressures of their daily lives. As they sat on a bench, Iyabo looked at Joshua with a mix of hope and apprehension. Joshua, I know I've hurt you deeply, Iyabo began. But I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to prove my love for you and to rebuild the trust we lost. Joshua listened, his expression unreadable. Iyabo, I appreciate that you're willing to work on this. But the damage that's been done, it's not something that can be fixed overnight. I know, Iyabo said softly. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want to show you that I'm serious about changing, about being the person you deserve. They talked for hours, discussing their feelings, their hopes and their fears. It was an emotional conversation, but it was also a step towards understanding each other's perspectives. The children were adjusting to the new reality, though it was clear they missed having their father around. Iyabo tried her best to make the transition as smooth as possible, but the absence of Joshua was a constant source of sadness for them. One afternoon, as Iyabo was helping the kids with their homework, her youngest daughter, Temi, asked, Mommy, when is Daddy coming home? Iyabo's heart ached at the question. She had been dreading this moment, no easy answers. She took a deep breath and tried to find the right words. Daddy is staying somewhere else for a while, Iyabo explained gently. He's just taking some time to work on some things, but he loves you very much and he'll come and visit us. Temi looked up at her with big, questioning eyes. But why can't he come home? Iyabo struggled to find a comforting answer. Sometimes, adults need time to figure things out. But we're a family, and that means we stick together and support each other, no matter what. The conversation was a painful reminder of the impact of her actions on her children. Iyabo promised herself that she would do everything she could to make things as normal as possible for them, despite the ongoing turmoil in their lives. After several weeks of reflection and communication, Joshua found himself at a crossroads. He had been weighing the possibility of reconciling with Iyabo against the reality of their situation. The emotional pain was still fresh, but he had started to see glimpses of hope in their conversations. One evening, as he sat in his apartment, he received a message from Iyabo, asking if they could meet to discuss their future. Joshua agreed, feeling a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. When they met, Joshua had made a decision. He wanted to explore the possibility of reconciliation, but he needed to be clear about his boundaries and expectations. He wanted to ensure that any attempt at rebuilding their relationship was based on mutual trust and commitment. Iyabo, Joshua began, I've been thinking a lot about us. I want to work on our marriage, but we need to be honest with each other. We need to rebuild trust, and that means being open and transparent. Iyabo nodded, her eyes filled with hope. I understand. I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to earn your trust again. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to put in the effort. Joshua took a deep breath. We need to start with small steps, and we need to be patient. We can't rush this. But I want to try. As they left the meeting, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead would be challenging, but both of them were ready to face it together. With the decision made to attempt reconciliation, Joshua and Iyabo began to work on rebuilding their relationship. They sought couples counseling to help navigate the complexities of their situation, and to learn how to communicate more effectively. The counseling sessions were emotionally intense, but also enlightening. They worked on understanding each other's perspectives, addressing the issues that had led to the breakdown of their marriage, and finding ways to rebuild trust. Their therapist helped them set realistic goals for their relationship and provided them with tools to improve their communication. Joshua and Iyabo committed to being open and honest with each other, and they began to take small steps towards healing. As they worked on their relationship, Joshua found that his feelings of anger and betrayal were starting to subside. He began to see Iyabo's efforts to make amends and started to appreciate the small changes she was making. Iyabo, in turn, was grateful for Joshua's willingness to give their marriage another chance. The process of rebuilding their relationship was slow and required patience, but both Joshua and Iyabo were dedicated to making it work. They knew that the road ahead would be long, but they were determined to create a new beginning for their family. As Joshua and Iyabo continued their counseling sessions, they faced various challenges along the way. Old wounds and unresolved issues resurfaced, and there were moments of frustration and doubt. However, they were also experiencing small victories and moments of connection that gave them hope. One day, during a counseling session, Joshua and Iyabo had a breakthrough. They were able to openly discuss their feelings of hurt and betrayal without defensiveness. This moment of vulnerability allowed them to gain a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives. Their therapist praised them for their progress and encouraged them to continue working on their relationship. You've made significant strides, the therapist said. It's important to acknowledge and celebrate these achievements, no matter how small. Joshua and Iyabo took this advice to heart and began to recognize and appreciate the positive changes in their relationship. They started to enjoy spending time together again, rediscovering the joys of their partnership. Despite the ongoing challenges, they found strength in their commitment to each other and to their family. The process of healing was far from complete, but they were determined to continue working towards a stronger and more loving relationship. One weekend, Joshua and Iyabo decided to take the children on a family outing. They wanted to create positive experiences for their kids and show them that, despite the difficulties, their family remained a priority. They chose a local park with playgrounds and picnic areas. As they spent the day together, they saw the joy on their children's faces and felt a renewed sense of hope. The laughter and playfulness of their kids were a reminder of the love that had always been at the core of their family. Joshua and Iyabo took the opportunity to bond with their children, engaging in activities and sharing meals together. They were mindful of creating a supportive and loving environment for their kids, despite the ongoing challenges in their marriage. The outing was a positive experience for the entire family, and it reinforced Joshua and Iyabo's commitment to working through their issues. They realized that their children's happiness and well-being were important motivators in their journey towards reconciliation. As they continued their efforts to rebuild their relationship, Joshua and Iyabo spent time reflecting on their past. They revisited old memories, both happy and painful, and discussed how their experiences had shaped their relationship. One evening, they looked through old and shared stories about their early years together. They talked about the dreams and aspirations they had when they first met, and how their relationship had evolved over time. The process of reflecting on their past allowed them to appreciate the positive aspects of their relationship and to acknowledge the challenges they had faced. It also helped them to understand the factors that had contributed to their current situation. Joshua and Iyabo used these reflections as a foundation for moving forward. They recognized the importance of learning from their past experiences and using those lessons to build a stronger and more resilient relationship. Rebuilding trust was a central focus of Joshua and Iyabo's efforts. They understood that trust had been deeply damaged, and it would take time and consistent effort to repair it. They worked on being transparent with each other, sharing their thoughts and feelings openly. Joshua made an effort to listen without judgment, while Iyabo focused on being honest and accountable for her actions. Their counseling sessions continued to provide valuable guidance, helping them to navigate the complexities of rebuilding trust. They practiced open communication and made an effort to address any issues or concerns as they arose. As they progressed, they began to notice improvements in their trust and connection. Small gestures of reassurance and support helped to strengthen their bond and foster a sense of security in their relationship. Despite the ongoing challenges, Joshua and Iyabo remained committed to rebuilding their trust and creating a healthier and more supportive relationship. Joshua and Iyabo faced various challenges as they continued their journey towards reconciliation. They encountered moments of doubt, miscommunication, and emotional upheaval, but they remained committed to working through these difficulties together. One evening, during a particularly difficult conversation, Iyabo expressed her frustrations about the slow progress in their relationship. Joshua listened attentively and validated her feelings, acknowledging that the process of healing was challenging. "I know it's been hard," Joshua said gently. "But I want you to know that I'm committed to making this work. We're in this together, and we'll get through it one step at a time." Iyabo appreciated Joshua's support and reassurance. She recognized that their ability to navigate challenges together was a crucial aspect of their healing process. They continued to rely on each other for support and encouragement, strengthening their partnership. As they faced obstacles, they also celebrated their successes and milestones. Each positive experience reinforced their commitment to their relationship and motivated them to keep moving forward. As Joshua and Iyabo worked on rebuilding their relationship, they also focused on reconnecting intimately. They recognized that physical and emotional intimacy were important aspects of their partnership and were essential for healing. They made an effort to spend quality time together, engaging in activities that fostered closeness and connection. Whether it was sharing a meal, enjoying a movie night, or simply talking about their day, they prioritized nurturing their bond. Their counselor encouraged them to explore ways to rekindle their intimacy, emphasizing the importance of emotional vulnerability and mutual support. Joshua and Iyabo worked on being open and attentive to each other's needs, both emotionally and physically. As they reconnected, they experienced moments of tenderness and affection that helped to reinforce their love for each other. These intimate moments were a reminder of the deep connection they shared and a source of hope for their future. Recognizing that their children were also affected by the changes in their family, Joshua and Iyabo decided to seek family therapy. They wanted to ensure that their children's emotional needs were being addressed, and that they were providing a supportive environment for them. The family worked with Joshua and Iyabo to create a safe space for their children to express their feelings and concerns. The sessions included activities and discussions that helped the children understand the changes in their family and learn how to cope with their emotions. Joshua and Iyabo also used the therapy sessions as an opportunity to strengthen their family bond and to work on effective communication. They focused on creating a supportive and nurturing environment for their children, ensuring that they felt loved and valued. The family therapy sessions were an important part of the healing process, helping both Joshua and Iyabo to address the emotional impact of their situation on their children and to work together to support their family. As Joshua and Iyabo worked on their relationship, they also recognized the importance of rebuilding their social connections. They had both experienced a sense of isolation during their separation, and they wanted to reconnect with friends and family. They started by reaching out to old friends and acquaintances, making an effort to re-establish their social network. They attended social gatherings and events, reconnecting with people who had been an important part of their lives. Joshua and Iyabo found that rebuilding their social connections provided them with additional support and a sense of belonging. It also allowed them to share their experiences and receive encouragement from others who cared about them. The process of reconnecting with their social circle was a positive step towards healing and provided them with a sense of community as they continued to work on their relationship. As Joshua and Iyabo made progress in their relationship, they began to look towards the future with hope and optimism. They discussed their long-term goals and aspirations, both as individuals and as a couple. They talked about their plans for their family, including their hopes for their children's education and future. They also discussed their personal goals and the steps they wanted to take to achieve them. Joshua and Iyabo recognized that planning for the future was an important aspect of rebuilding their relationship. It provided them with a sense of direction and purpose, and it helped them to focus on the positive aspects of their lives. They made a commitment to continue working on their relationship and to support each other in achieving their goals. The process of planning for the future gave them a renewed sense of hope and motivation. With their relationship continuing to heal and strengthen, Joshua and Iyabo embraced the opportunity for new beginnings. They recognized that their journey had been challenging, but they were determined to create a positive and fulfilling future together. They celebrated their progress and the milestones they had achieved, acknowledging the hard work and dedication that had brought them to this point. They also made a commitment to continue nurturing their relationship and to support each other in their personal growth. Joshua and Iyabo looked forward to the future with hope and excitement. They were ready to embrace new opportunities and experiences, knowing that they had built a strong foundation for their relationship. As they moved forward, they remained focused on their shared goals and aspirations. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they were committed to facing it together with love and resilience. As Joshua and Iyabo continued to rebuild their relationship, they made an effort to rediscover the joy in their lives. They focused on finding happiness in everyday moments and creating positive experiences together. They started to engage in activities that they both enjoyed, such as exploring new hobbies, traveling, and spending quality time with their children. They found that these shared experiences helped to strengthen their bond and brought them closer together. Joshua and Iyabo also made an effort to celebrate their successes and to appreciate the progress they had made. They acknowledged the importance of finding joy and gratitude in their journey, and they worked on cultivating a positive outlook. Rediscovering joy was an important aspect of their healing process. It allowed them to focus on the positive aspects of their relationship and to create lasting memories together. Despite their progress, Joshua and Iyabo faced setbacks along the way. There were moments of frustration, miscommunication, and emotional challenges that tested their resolve. One evening, they had a disagreement that escalated into an argument. Both of them felt overwhelmed and frustrated, and it seemed like their progress was in jeopardy. The argument left them feeling disheartened and unsure of their next steps. However, they recognized that setbacks were a natural part of the healing process. They took the time to cool down and reflect on the situation, and they reached out to their therapist for guidance. With the help of their therapist, Joshua and Iyabo were able to work through their issues and address the underlying concerns that had contributed to the disagreement. They learned that facing setbacks with openness and a willingness to work through challenges was an important part of their journey. As Joshua and Iyabo continued to work on their relationship, they focused on strengthening their bond. They made an effort to prioritize their relationship and to nurture their connection. They started to engage in activities that allowed them to connect on a deep level, such as sharing their dreams and aspirations, discussing their values, and working on joint projects. They also made a conscious effort to show appreciation and affection for each other. Joshua and Iyabo recognized the importance of maintaining a strong bond and staying connected. They made an effort to support each other's personal growth and to work together towards their shared goals. Strengthening their bond was a key aspect of their journey towards reconciliation. It allowed them to build a deeper connection and to create a more fulfilling and supportive relationship. As Joshua and Iyabo continued their journey, they celebrated the milestones they achieved along the way. They recognized the importance of acknowledging their progress and celebrating their successes. One evening, they celebrated their anniversary by reflecting on the progress they had made and the challenges they had overcome. They shared their thoughts and feelings about their journey and expressed their gratitude for each other's support. They also celebrated their children's achievements and milestones, acknowledging the role that their family played in their healing process. The celebrations were a reminder of the positive aspects of their lives and the love they shared as a family. Celebrating milestones helped Joshua and Iyabo to stay motivated and to appreciate the positive changes in their relationship. It reinforced their commitment to continuing their journey together. Joshua and Iyabo continued to navigate the challenges of parenthood while working on their relationship. They focused on being supportive and present for their children, despite the ongoing changes in their family. They made an effort to spend quality time with their kids, engaging in activities that allowed them to bond and create positive experiences. They also worked on maintaining open communication with their children, addressing their concerns and emotions. Joshua and Iyabo recognized the importance of providing a stable and loving environment for their children. They continued to support each other in their roles as parents and to prioritize their family's well-being. Navigating parenthood was an important aspect of their journey. It provided them with additional motivation to work on their relationship and to create a positive and supportive environment for their family. As Joshua and Iyabo worked on their relationship, they also focused on rebuilding their friendships. They reached out to old friends and made an effort to reconnect with their social circle. They attended social gatherings and events, and they made an effort to strengthen their relationships with friends who had been supportive during their separation. Rebuilding friendships provided them with a sense of community and support. Joshua and Iyabo found that reconnecting with friends was a positive aspect of their journey. It allowed them to share their experiences, receive encouragement, and enjoy the company of those who cared about them. Rebuilding friendships also helped them to maintain a sense of balance in their lives and to create a supportive network of people who were invested in their well-being. As Joshua and Iyabo continued to rebuild their relationship, they embraced the changes that came with their journey. They recognized that change was a natural part of the healing process, and that it was an opportunity for growth and renewal. They made an effort to adapt to the new dynamics in their relationship and to embrace the positive changes that were taking place. They focused on being open to new experiences and opportunities. Joshua and Iyabo also worked on creating new traditions and routines that reflected their evolving relationship. They celebrated their progress and looked forward to the future with optimism. Embracing change was an important aspect of their journey. It allowed them to create a new beginning and to build a stronger and more resilient relationship. As they worked on rebuilding their relationship, Joshua and Iyabo focused on finding balance in their lives. They recognized the importance of maintaining a healthy equilibrium between their personal and family responsibilities. They made an effort to manage their time effectively and to prioritize their well-being. They also worked on finding a balance between their individual goals and their shared aspirations. Joshua and Iyabo found that finding balance was essential for their overall happiness and fulfillment. It allowed them to create a harmonious and supportive environment for themselves and their family. Finding balance was a key aspect of their journey towards reconciliation. It helped them to navigate the complexities of their relationship and to create a positive and stable foundation for their future. As Joshua and Iyabo continued to rebuild their relationship, they focused on building a future together. They set long-term goals and made plans for their life as a couple and as a family. They discussed their aspirations for their careers, their family life, and their personal growth. They worked on creating a shared vision for their future and took steps towards achieving their goals. Joshua and Iyabo recognized that building a future together required commitment and effort. They remained dedicated to supporting each other and to working towards their shared aspirations. Building a future together was an important aspect of their journey. It provided them with a sense of direction and purpose, and helped them to stay motivated and focused on their relationship. As they continued their journey, Joshua and Iyabo embraced the concept of forgiveness. They recognized that forgiveness was an essential part of healing and rebuilding their relationship. They worked on letting go of past grievances and focusing on the present. They made an effort to understand each other's perspectives and to offer forgiveness for the hurt that had been caused. Joshua and Iyabo found that embracing forgiveness allowed them to move forward with a renewed sense of connection and trust. It helped them to build a stronger and more resilient relationship. Embracing forgiveness was a key aspect of their journey. It allowed them to create a positive and supportive environment for their relationship and to focus on building a future together. After months of hard work, healing, and commitment, Joshua and Iyabo found themselves in a place of renewed hope and excitement for the future. Their relationship had grown stronger, and they had rekindled their love and trust. They began to look forward to new opportunities and the next chapter of their lives. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together in their cozy home, Iyabo revealed that she was pregnant. The news was met with tears of joy and a sense of profound gratitude. Both Joshua and Iyabo were thrilled at the thought of expanding their family and were eager to embrace this new blessing. The news of Iyabo's pregnancy brought an additional sense of purpose and happiness to their lives. They eagerly began to prepare for the arrival of their new baby, envisioning a future filled with love and joy. With their relationship flourishing and their family growing, Joshua secured a new job offer in the United States. The opportunity was a significant step forward for their family, offering both professional growth for Joshua and a fresh start in a new country. The decision to move to the United States was made with careful consideration and excitement. Joshua and Iyabo, along with their children, began to prepare for the transition, making arrangements for their relocation and embracing the prospect of a new beginning in Texas. The move was a symbol of their commitment to building a brighter future together. It marked the culmination of their journey through challenges and a step towards a promising new chapter in their lives. Upon arriving in Texas, Joshua and Iyabo settled into their new home with a sense of excitement and anticipation. The process of settling in involved exploring their new surroundings, meeting new friends, and adapting to their new environment. Iyabo's pregnancy continued to progress smoothly, and the couple eagerly anticipated the arrival of their twins. They found comfort in the supportive community they had joined and looked forward to creating new memories in their new home. The transition to Texas was marked by moments of joy and adaptation, as Joshua and Iyabo embraced their new life with optimism and enthusiasm. They were determined to make the most of their fresh start and to build a fulfilling life for their growing family. The day of Iyabo's delivery arrived, and the couple welcomed the birth of their twins with overwhelming joy. The birth of their children was a moment of profound happiness and fulfillment, marking the culmination of their journey and the beginning of a new chapter as a family. The twins, a boy and a girl, brought a sense of completeness and joy to Joshua and Iyabo's lives. They were grateful for the new addition to their family and were excited to embark on this new phase of parenthood. The arrival of their twins was celebrated with love and gratitude. The couple embraced their role as parents with enthusiasm and dedication, cherishing the opportunity to nurture and raise their children in their new home. As they settled into their new routine, Joshua and Iyabo focused on creating a happy and fulfilling life for their family. They continued to nurture their relationship, support each other, and cherish the moments they spent together. They engaged in family activities, explored their new city, and built a strong foundation for their children. The couple was determined to make the most of their new beginning and to create a positive and loving environment for their family. Their journey had been challenging, but it had led them to a place of happiness and fulfillment. Joshua and Iyabo looked forward to the future with hope and excitement, knowing that they had built a strong and resilient family. With their family thriving and their relationship stronger than ever, Joshua and Iyabo embraced the future with a sense of optimism and excitement. They continued to work towards their goals and to support each other in their personal and professional lives. They celebrated their successes, cherished their moments together, and looked forward to the many adventures and opportunities that lay ahead. Their journey had been marked by love, growth, and resilience, and they were excited to build a bright future together. Joshua and Iyabo's story was a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and commitment. They had navigated their challenges and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the future with a renewed sense of purpose and joy. As the years went by, Joshua and Iyabo continued to create lasting memories with their children. They celebrated milestones, shared special moments, and built a life filled with love and happiness. They made an effort to cherish the time they spent together as a family, whether it was through family vacations, holidays, or simple everyday moments. Their home was filled with laughter, joy, and the warmth of their strong bond. Joshua and Iyabo looked back on their journey with gratitude and pride. They had overcome challenges and built a fulfilling life together, and they were dedicated to making the most of every moment with their loved ones. As they reflected on their journey, Joshua and Iyabo appreciated the growth and transformation they had experienced. They acknowledged the challenges they had faced and the lessons they had learned along the way. Their story was one of resilience, love, and redemption. They had navigated the complexities of their relationship and emerged stronger, with a renewed sense of connection and purpose. Joshua and Iyabo were grateful for the support they had received and the positive changes they had made. Their journey had shaped their lives in meaningful ways, and they were committed to continuing to nurture their relationship and their family. As they looked to the future, Joshua and Iyabo remained hopeful and optimistic. They were excited about the opportunities that lay ahead, and were committed to building a bright and fulfilling future for their family. They continued to support each other in their personal and professional goals and to cherish the moments they shared. Their love and dedication to each other provided them with the strength and motivation to embrace the future with confidence. Joshua and Iyabo's story was a testament to the power of love and the importance of perseverance. They had built a life filled with happiness, and they were excited to continue their journey together. In the end, Joshua and Iyabo's story was one of triumph and fulfillment. They had faced their challenges with courage and determination, and they had emerged stronger and more united than ever. Their life in Texas was filled with love, joy, and the promise of a bright future. They cherished their family, celebrated their successes, and embraced the opportunities that came their way. Joshua and Iyabo lived happily ever after, surrounded by the love of their children and the strength of their bond. Their journey was a reminder of the power of love and the importance of never giving up on each other. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please kindly like and subscribe for more episodes like this.